What if I told you that going silent could actually push him further away instead of pulling him closer? For years, we've been told that no contact is the golden rule, the ultimate strategy to make him miss you. But here's the uncomfortable truth. It doesn't work on every man, and it doesn't work in every situation. In fact, if he's emotionally detached or already slipping away, your silence might just confirm to him that you've moved on. That doesn't create regret. It creates closure for him. Now listen carefully. I'm not saying no contact is useless, but if you're using it as a passive hope, waiting, wondering, checking your phone every hour, then you're not in control. You've handed over your power, and that's exactly what needs to change. The problem isn't the silence. The problem is using silence without strategy, without understanding what makes him emotionally panic. Silence alone doesn't flip that switch. What if there was a smarter way? A way to subtly influence his thoughts, emotions, and perceptions of you, without begging, without chasing, and without sitting in limbo? That's exactly what we're going to break down in this video. Because this isn't about games, it's about psychology, it's about emotional impact, and it's about turning the tables in a way that makes him see your absence as a loss, not a relief. So if you're tired of waiting for a text that never comes, if you're done playing the ignore him and pray game, then stay with me. Because what you're about to learn doesn't just get his attention, it shakes his core. Let's get into it. Everyone tells you to go no contact, just disappear, vanish, let the silence do the work. But here's the thing, no one talks about. What if your silence doesn't even register? What if he's not sitting there missing you, but instead adjusting to life without you faster than you thought? That's the risk no one warns you about. No contact only works if there's emotional weight behind your absence. If he didn't fear losing you when you were present, your silence won't suddenly wake him up. And that's why this approach, forget no contact, is a complete game changer. Because it flips the script. It doesn't wait for him to notice you're gone. It makes sure he feels it. This isn't about chasing. It's not about texting him or showing up in his DMs. It's about becoming unforgettable in a way that shakes him. It's about shifting your energy so powerfully that your presence still echoes in his mind, even when you're not saying a single word. That's the real flex. That's emotional influence. When you stop using silence as a strategy and start using emotional contrast, everything changes. Suddenly you're not the woman who disappeared. You're the woman who transformed. And that transformation unsettles him. He starts to feel it in small, creeping moments, the kind that hit at night when he's alone, the kind that make him question if he ever really knew you. And that is when you become unforgettable. The reason this works faster than no contact is because it creates emotional movement, not passivity. You're not just avoiding him, you're creating a gap so wide and intriguing, it pulls him toward you. It's not absence for the sake of pride. It's presence on a higher level, one he doesn't have access to anymore. And that loss, that's where the regret begins. Forget no contact isn't about forgetting him. It's about forgetting the old version of you, the one who waited, hoped, begged. She's gone. And what's left? A woman in her power playing a different game now, one he doesn't know how to win. Stay with me, because once you understand this shift, everything about how you handle him and yourself will change forever. Let's be honest. When your heart is shattered, you'll take advice from anywhere. Friends, TikTok, random coaches on YouTube, telling you to glow up or stay silent. And while it all sounds empowering on the surface, there's one massive flaw in most breakup advice that no one seems to talk about. It's not built for your story. Most of the breakup advice out there is one size fits all. They tell you to cut contact, level up, act like you don't care. But they ignore one thing: you do care. Deeply. You were emotionally invested. And now you're expected to pretend you're not hurting? That doesn't make you stronger. It just makes your healing slower, because you're faking confidence instead of rebuilding it. Here's the truth. Pretending to be over, it doesn't make you over it. And disappearing without direction doesn't automatically make him miss you. What actually works isn't hiding your pain. It's transforming it into power. It's understanding the dynamics between you and him, and using that knowledge to shift the emotional balance, quietly, confidently, and intentionally. The hidden flaw in most breakup advice is that it teaches you to react, not lead. It focuses on how to win him back, instead of showing you how to regain control over your own emotional gravity. But when you step into that energy, where you're not chasing, not waiting, not performing for anyone's attention, he feels that shift. He senses the emotional door closing, not because you're playing games, but because you're actually moving forward. Most advice is surface level. This goes to the root. This changes how he sees you, because it changes how you see you. The real breakthrough doesn't happen when you block him. It happens when he looks at you and realizes you're not the same woman he left. You've evolved, and now his access to you feels uncertain. That's not fake strength, that's transformation. And it's exactly why the usual breakup rules don't apply anymore. So if you're tired of recycled advice and emotional quick fixes, stay with me. Because the deeper we go, the clearer it becomes. This time you're not waiting to be chosen. You're choosing yourself. They say silence is powerful. That if you just go quiet, he'll come crawling back, haunted by your absence. But here's the reality. Silence alone doesn't trigger regret, especially if he thinks you're still quietly waiting on the other end. You want to know what really triggers regret faster than silence. Change. Not fake change. Not posting filtered selfies or pretending to be over it. I'm talking about a shift so real, so undeniable, that it forces him to look at you with new eyes. And suddenly, the version of you he took for granted doesn't exist anymore. Regret doesn't show up because you went quiet. It shows up when you evolve without him. When he realizes he's no longer the source of your attention, your energy, your worth, that's what creates the emotional panic. That's when his mind starts racing, questioning. Did I lose her for good? Who is she now? Why does she feel so far away? Silence is passive. Change is active. It tells a story without words. And the story he sees is this. You're no longer orbiting his world. You've built your own. You're not waiting for his message. You're moving like someone who knows her value. You see, men don't regret losing a woman who disappears. They regret losing the woman who transforms in front of their eyes. When she becomes untouchable, radiant, and emotionally independent. That's when he starts to question his choices. That's when he feels the loss. Not because you vanished, but because you've risen. The best part? You don't have to say a word. It's not about reaching out or dropping hints. It's about becoming the kind of woman who triggers regret by simply being unavailable at the level he left you. He remembers the old version of you, but now she's gone. Replaced by someone he can't reach, can't read, and suddenly wants back. Forget silence. Be the plot twist. Be the upgrade he never saw coming. Because that's what lingers in a man's mind long after the breakup. That moment he realizes he didn't just lose you. He lost the chance to grow with you. Let's keep going. Because this shift, it only gets deeper. If you want him to crave you, not just miss you but obsess over you, you have to stop thinking like someone who's been hurt and start thinking like someone he's afraid to lose. Craving doesn't start with distance. It starts with emotional disruption. Obsession happens when something gets under his skin. When the emotional pattern he expected from you suddenly changes. That's how the human brain works. We get addicted to what's unpredictable, to what we can't fully figure out. And that's exactly where your power lives. When he knew he could reach you anytime. When he felt you'd be there no matter what, you were safe. Familiar, predictable. But once you interrupt that rhythm, not by disappearing, but by evolving, his brain scrambles to understand the shift. And in that confusion comes craving. It's not about posting thirst traps or pretending to be too busy. It's about becoming a version of yourself that feels just out of reach, not physically, but emotionally. When he feels the warmth you once gave freely start to retreat, when he sees your energy glowing in a new direction, he doesn't just wonder where you are, he wonders who you're becoming. Obsession is tied to perceived loss and emotional significance. When he realizes the emotional access he once had is now gated, now rare, his mind attaches more value to it. That's psychology. We want what we feel slipping away. We chase what feels scarce. So how do you make him crave you? You create contrast, show up differently, detach with elegance, live boldly without making it about him. The moment he senses you're no longer operating from a place of need but from self-possession, that's when his mind starts looping on you. That's when your name lingers in his thoughts, in his dreams, in his quiet moments. You don't become unforgettable by being the one who always reaches out. You become unforgettable by being the one he can't decode, the one who made him feel something deep, then pulled away. That's the spark of obsession. Not silence, not games, but emotional elevation. And once you understand this, you'll never chase a man's attention again, because you'll know how to own it from a distance. Let's go deeper. You're about to unlock something powerful. There's a big lie floating around in post-breakup advice, that in order to regain your power, you have to become cold, distant, and detached. That you need to harden your heart, shut down your feelings, and act like he never mattered. But let's be honest, that's not strength. That's self-protection, dressed up as empowerment, and it doesn't heal you, it just hides you. You don't have to go cold to get your power back. In fact, coldness isn't power at all. It's emotional shutdown. Real power is warm, grounded, calm. It's when you're still in touch with your emotions, but you're no longer ruled by them. Regaining your power starts when you stop making him the center of your emotional world. Not by pretending he didn't affect you, but by finally understanding that his approval isn't the source of your worth. You reclaim your power the moment you stop performing for his attention and start living from a place of self-trust. Not pride, not ego, but truth. He doesn't need to see you act cold to know he's lost something valuable. What hits harder is when you're still kind, still graceful, still glowing, but completely unavailable for the old emotional cycle. That quiet shift is magnetic. That's what makes him lean in, not pull away. Because cold creates walls. Power creates curiosity. The moment you stop needing closure, stop waiting for the text, stop stalking his stories, that's when your energy shifts. And he feels it, even if you haven't said a word. Because power is felt, not shown. It's not about being louder. It's about being less reactive, less available to the chaos, more available to yourself. So no, you don't have to freeze your heart to win this. You don't need to play Ice Queen to feel strong. You can be soft and powerful, emotional and elevated. You can still love deeply and love yourself more. And when that clicks, that's when everything changes. Not just how he sees you, but how you see you. Let's keep going. You're not just healing, you're rising. This is where most women unintentionally sabotage their own power right after the breakup, when emotions are raw and every instinct is screaming to do something, anything. And it's in this chaos that the most damaging mistakes happen, not because you're weak, but because you're human and hurting. The first mistake, breaking no contact impulsively just to get a reaction. You send that, "Hey, hope you're okay," text not because you want a conversation, but because you're terrified of being forgotten. And when he doesn't respond the way you hoped, it cuts deeper. What you're really doing is reopening a wound that hasn't even started healing. Another mistake, trying to prove your worth to him. You may start over-explaining, defending your emotions, trying to show him how much you cared or how good you were to him. But the truth is, value doesn't speak, it shows. If he couldn't see your worth when he had you, explaining it now only gives him more emotional power. Then there's oversharing your glow-up, posting stories designed for him to see, carefully curated to make him regret. But if your growth is fueled by the hope that he's watching, it's still about him, and he can feel that. Real growth becomes magnetic when it's not performative, when you're doing it because you're finally choosing you. Another huge trap, listening to advice that doesn't match your situation. Everyone's quick to tell you to block, delete, ignore, but not every breakup is the same. You have to assess your own emotional landscape. Acting out of someone else's script can pull you further from what you need to heal and rise. And finally, waiting. Not dating, not living, not moving forward, just waiting. Waiting for a text, a sign, a shift. Waiting is the most invisible mistake because you can look strong on the outside, but be frozen on the inside. And nothing shifts your energy faster than realizing you don't need to wait to be chosen. Every one of these mistakes comes from the same place, fear. But the moment you stop reacting from fear and start responding from self-worth, everything begins to turn. Let's move forward. You're not here to repeat cycles, you're here to break them. One of the most misunderstood parts of shifting the dynamic with someone who pulled away is what to say, if anything at all. Words are powerful, but when used the wrong way, they can actually undo your progress. Especially when emotions are still raw. The temptation to reach out and express everything you're feeling can be overwhelming. You want clarity, you want closure, you want to be understood. But here's the truth that hurts. The more you try to explain your pain to someone who's emotionally detached, the less impact your words have. To shift the dynamic, you have to stop speaking from the wound and start speaking from your worth. That means choosing your words carefully, or sometimes choosing silence when your old self would have tried to fix, explain, or plead. If he's expecting you to reach out, to chase, to break first, your silence is already saying something loud. But if you do decide to speak, it has to come from a different frequency. Not the version of you who's heartbroken and hoping, but the version who's grounded, reflective, and no longer available in the way he remembers. Never say things like "I just wanted to talk," "I miss you," or "I don't understand what happened." These are emotional habits that keep you stuck in the dynamic of seeking validation. Instead, if you choose to say anything, speak from clarity. A calm message like "I'm taking some time to focus on myself, and it feels right" carries far more impact than an emotionally loaded paragraph. Why? Because it sends a message he's not used to. You're not angry, you're not clinging, and you're not waiting. You're simply no longer playing the same emotional role. The most powerful thing you can communicate is emotional distance without hostility. It disarms him. It makes him question where he stands with you. And that uncertainty creates curiosity, which is the emotional seed that often grows into regret. When he can no longer predict your behavior, when you don't give him emotional reassurance, you regain control of the dynamic without ever needing to argue, beg, or rehash the past. Also, don't try to have the closure conversation too early. If you're still emotionally attached, you'll only reopen wounds. True closure doesn't come from his explanation. It comes from your decision to stop giving your energy to someone who didn't value it when he had it. When your energy shifts, your words become fewer, but far more powerful. You're no longer speaking to be heard. You're speaking to reflect who you've become. And sometimes the most powerful message is no message at all. Let your silence build tension. Let your self-respect speak volumes. And when you do speak, make every word feel like a woman who's already moved forward, because that's the kind of voice he'll never forget. There comes a point when words are no longer enough. You've said everything you could. You've tried explaining your worth, showing your heart, proving your loyalty. But here's the truth. The more you try to convince someone of your value with words, the more they begin to doubt it. That's why at this stage, if you truly want to shift the dynamic and elevate how he sees you, you have to stop talking and start showing. Real value doesn't shout. It doesn't need to prove itself. It's felt. It's sensed. It's seen in how you move, how you carry yourself, how you no longer make decisions based on his attention or absence. And that shift, that's when everything starts to change. You elevate your value when your life becomes about you again. Not about revenge, not about trying to be seen, but about returning to yourself. You don't have to go out of your way to look unbothered. You become unbothered the moment you stop trying to control how he perceives you and start focusing on how you perceive you. Show, through your actions, that you are no longer emotionally available to the version of the relationship that left you drained. You don't respond to breadcrumbs. You don't react to inconsistency. You don't engage in conversations that leave you feeling small. That's not cold, that's self-respect. And it communicates more than 1,000 texts ever could. Post less for attention and more for alignment. Go places you love. Wear what makes you feel like the woman you were before he shook your confidence. Reconnect with friends, with dreams, with the parts of yourself you tucked away to keep him comfortable. Every time you choose yourself over his uncertainty, you raise your value, not just in his eyes, but in your own. The irony is, when he finally notices that shift, he may come back around. But by then, your standards will have changed. The woman he once knew, the one who over-explained, over-gave, and over-waited, she's not available anymore. You've outgrown the dynamic. And that elevation isn't loud, but it's undeniable. You don't have to prove you're worthy of being loved. You already are. What you have to prove to yourself is that you're no longer willing to settle for half-hearted connection, delayed commitment, or emotional crumbs, just to feel close to someone who couldn't see your light the first time. When you begin to live like you know your value, people are forced to meet you at that level, or exit your life. Either way, you win. And the most powerful thing about this transformation, you won't need to announce it. He'll feel it before you ever say a word. If you've made it to this point, pause and give yourself credit. Not just for watching a video, but for choosing yourself. Even if it still hurts, even if your heart still wonders what could have been, that choice alone is everything. You've spent so much time trying to make sense of the silence, trying to be enough for someone who couldn't see what was right in front of them, but now you're doing something different. You're not chasing answers, you're reclaiming your power, quietly, completely. This whole journey hasn't been about him, it's been about you finally remembering who you were before the overthinking, before the waiting, before the emotional weight made you feel small. You're not broken, you're just in the process of rebuilding from truth instead of fear. Let's revisit the key shifts that brought you here, so they stay with you long after the video ends. You stopped treating silence like a strategy and started using it as a space for transformation. No more disappearing just to be missed. You started evolving to be undeniable. You learned that pretending to not care doesn't make you powerful. Real power is calm. It's quiet confidence. It's walking away from what hurt you without dragging bitterness behind you. You stopped reacting emotionally and began responding intentionally. Every time you chose not to send that text, not to stalk his profile, not to post just to be seen, you were shifting the energy. That's not weakness. That's leadership. You realize that value isn't something you explain, it's something you embody. You no longer need to tell him you've grown. He'll feel it in your absence, and if he doesn't, that's the point. The goal was never to be noticed, the goal was to be free. You understood that closure doesn't come from conversations, it comes from decisions. And your decision was this: I will no longer lower my value to keep someone close. If you couldn't love me when I was giving everything, you don't get access to me now that I'm giving it to myself. You stopped waiting to be chosen, you chose yourself. And in doing so you became unforgettable. Not because you fought harder, but because you walked away softer. So whether he comes back or not is no longer the story. The real story is who you're becoming now, how you're no longer trying to get back to who you were, but building something stronger, deeper, more self-owned. A woman in her fullness, in her peace, in her power. And this is just the beginning. Keep walking, keep rising. The version of you that's waiting on the other side of this pain, she's not wondering if he'll regret losing you. She's too busy becoming someone who finally realizes he was never the prize, you were.